So just how big are these strikes which unfolded bang in the middle of early morning today, 1:44 a.m.? What should India be bracing itself for? And what's the geopolitical response to India's strikes against Pakistan? With me, one of the foremost military strategists, General Harsha Kakar, joining us live. Great pleasure to welcome you on a day like this today, General Kakar.
It's a pleasure being here with you.
Let me first begin by asking you, so when you woke up this morning, had you anticipated this, that India had made up its mind to indulge in these retaliatory strikes?
In one way, you knew something was coming up. The question was when. And frankly, I wasn't very certain of today, but it had to happen. If you look at it, around 13 to 14 days was what happened after Balakot. Though I kept saying that there is never a rush, it's only when you're ready. And I keep giving the example of the Israeli strike back in Gaza. I said they took 3 weeks, and Hamas has got no air force, no artillery, no armor. And yet they took 3 weeks because you only do so when you're fully prepared. So in that sense, yes, it was a little bit early.
Okay. If you know, just on that point, that if this was a little bit early, and I guess it was, as you're rightly pointing out, it was clear from day one that something had to be done, given the fact that post-Pulwama, the airstrikes which were carried out, there was a certain threshold, there was a certain precedent that had been kept. Explain to me now in pure military terms, do we say that Operation Sindoor, this is just phase one, or can we expect more such strikes right now against Pakistan?
Decode, I'm not going to make any such statement. I don't think it's correct for any of us to make such a statement. I think firstly, we leave it to the government. They've conveyed a very clear message. They have made us, in fact, the statement has read that there were no military targets which were hit, which implied it's given Pakistan the option to back down. Will it back down? If it does, possibly you've conveyed what you wanted to. You met your goals, you met your aims. If you don't, then we will be possibly doing the escalation. Whether we want to or not, I would leave that to the government. Both options are with them and both options are correct. But the option that they've given on de-escalation, I think, is a very, very strong step, which, if acceptable, in some form has been flowing back from there. And that's something we need to wait and watch.
But, you know, many senior officers that I've been speaking to over these last few hours, they're all talking about one big X factor this time around in this conflict between India and Pakistan, which they said hadn't existed earlier, which is the presence of this maverick Pakistani army chief, General Munir. How do we look at this conflict, sir, through his eyes? Is this a humiliation for General Munir?
See, let's look at it in a slightly larger perspective, which you are from where you are now. Every Pakistan army chief, go back for the last 20 years. There is no Pakistan army chief during whose time we've not had terrorist strikes. And normally they occur whenever the army chief feels that either there is a need to regain control, to regain power within the nation, or to project his strength within. And up till about the time when we were on the Kadi Nindawala story, you found these were happening far more frequently. Post that, there tended to be a gap between incidents because of what we did. So, to say that, you know, whether this is the end or not, if you look between the Balakot and now, there's a 6-year gap. Because the message was firm and clear, there's a change of army chiefs. If you look between Balakot and Uri, there was a gap of just about, I think, 3 years. Now, 3 years because you were able to hide the impact of the cross-border strikes, them being terrorists. So when you can't hide the impact, you'll find that the lesson goes for a longer time. And when you were doing Kadi Ninda, it was almost most every few months or maybe once a year or once in 2 years that you had a major incident. Go all the way from 2001 to 2013, you can count the collection of incidents. And they were spread across the country. But in recent times, they've been restricted to J&K. Now, if you look at the political scenario, Munir is today struggling to maintain control within his country. He's having a problem with Imran Khan, who is still a powerful force behind bars. The setbacks in Balochistan and Khyber. So what do you do to unite the country and grab your people? A threat from India. And a strike from India is something which will always unite the Pakis. Today, it's the Pakistanis who've lifted the Twitter ban which they had for all these years. Why? They're looking for mass counter on the Indian impact. So I don't think this is going to have a major block, maybe for a few years. Maybe Asim Munir will not do it in his tenure, including his extended tenure, which he will get of another 3 years. But definitely, yes, not for all the time.
Okay. I think Air Vice Marshal Kak is also joining us live right now. Marshal Kak, can you hear me loud and clear, sir?
Yes, I can hear you, strength 5.
Great, sir. Good to have you on the program, sir.
Good to see you, but in not very happy circumstances. But let's see how things pan out.
Let's hope that it leads to some happiness at some stage for India, because that's the question which I was raising with General Kakar, General Kakar, Marshal Kak. That now that this strike has happened, what should India's stance be? A phone call has just taken place between the Chinese envoy and the National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, where Mr. Doval has said so very categorically to the Chinese that India is not going to escalate any further, but if there is any retaliation from Pakistan, then it will be met with an absolutely clear declaration of intent that there will be more such military action. How do we read this statement which has been made by the NSA, sir?
As always, Bhupi, you are spot on. It is not Ajit Doval talking to the Chinese ambassador, and it's not rocket science. There have been 14 days. I have done at least 12 odd interviews in which I have said, this is exactly what will happen. That contrary to what your colleagues who are in TV studios and fatigues with mics fitted with AK-47, unlike them, mature, thinking military minds who plan a kind of an operation which is counter to Baisaran, where savagery took place. It was not a terror attack. It was terror savagery. That you kill people in front of their own families and in such a horrible manner, something had to be done. So we knew that it will be, unlike what the TV warriors said, I was 100% sure, and I've said it, there will be a reaction, and the reaction will be proportionate, it will be non-escalatory, and it will be most likely against elements of terror target system, because it will not be a military targeting. As my Prime Minister himself said in the context of Ukraine, this is not an era for war. Most of all, not least for us, because we are on a pathway of socio-economic, technological development, virtually knocking on the doors of great power status. So this is expected. Now, the second point that you raised, and that's why I did this brief explanation, Pakistan until now has reacted in the manner of huge barrages right from near Ranbir Singhpura to Uri. And this is causing casualties to our civilians. And obviously, there is also artillery barrages from our side. We are used to it for decades. They are used to it for decades. So this is no riposte. Riposte has to be an use of kinetic force. Problem with the Pakistani leadership is they're between a rock and a hard place, because there is no terror infrastructure in India. India has never used terror as a policy option. So what do they strike? That we are waiting for. As to the last point you raised, if there is the action that has taken place has an expression called punitive deterrence. This is not an action only against Baisaran. but it is an action against all incidents that have taken place since Balakot in 2019.
But can I just ask you? Can I just ask you, sir? You've raised two interesting phrases right now: kinetic action versus punitive measures versus dismantling terror infrastructure. I mean, at the end of the day, if India has launched missiles, launched an attack on Pakistani territory, why should I not be saying that this is actually a clear-cut attack against Pakistan? That this is the biggest humiliation which a serving Pakistani army chief could be subjected to. Would that be an odious statement to make today?
Well, that is what the Pakistani cognitive and optical response has been so far. If you've been watching the Pakistan media, that firstly, plausible deniability, there is no terror infrastructure on our side. They've said it for 30 years.
Sure.
But now that the imagery is available in the public domain with weapons like scalp, weapons like crystal maze, like hammer, all air to air, air to ground, very precise weaponry with videos of how the weapon is released and how it has struck and what has been the impact. Unlike Balakot. Balakot, we didn't do this in the public domain. Whole world knows what India has done. You raised a very important point because in some ways, yes, it matters little whether you use the weapon from our territory, but it has struck Pakistan's Punjab, which is its virtually nerve center of its terror infrastructure, and which is also the nerve center for recruitment to the Pakistan Army, Jawans and others. So, there is a combination there. There's a strategic signaling in targeting, the infrastructure in Punjab more critically. And therefore, Pakistani view maybe, but then they have to face their own people, just like Indian leadership has been under pressure of the people last 14 days. When, how, where, what consequential impact are we seeking? And the demonstration of that has taken place this morning at 1:44 over the 23 minutes of the simultaneous attacks on 9 specific target systems with weapon-to-target matching, with precise determination of what we in air parlance call centroidal mean point of impact, up to accuracy of 10 meters, and actually been achieved. What the further steps will happen, I think we have to wait and watch. But I'm most disappointed that we have started doing Jai Ho and we have started congratulating each other at the CCS. This is not the time to congratulate. You can say we have had a successful strike against terror infrastructure as a public policy government response to what was done in Baisaran. A very mature, some of the most, I took part in 71 wars, some of the most decisive missions were done. No one congratulated anybody till it was all over. And this kind of a conflict and the manner it will pan out is not final.
So are you saying that this is actually, in clear-cut terms, the beginning of something that we do not know of? The beginning of a territory where we're completely uncertain of what we're entering, sir?
No. Bhupi, the thing is, one has studied escalation dynamics for decades. Even if we were to concede Pakistani position that you have escalated and you have used your own territory, you have crossed our own territory, and this is war, quote unquote. Let's take the Pakistani position. In escalation dynamics, power asymmetry is very important. The control of going up the ladder, every step of the ladder, has to be with the superior force. In this case, India has positive asymmetry in relation to the military balance between the two countries. So therefore, if India has taken a step and there is a Pakistani step in turn, then India will have to expand the target systems and see that it remains on top of the ladder. It's a step-by-step climb. It's not a sudden climb. And we must not forget the international community will have a role, whether it is Trump, whether it is MBS in Saudi Arabia, whether it's MBZ in UAE, whether it is other world leaders, including Macron in France, they will certainly be advisories to the government. But who will give the advisories to Pakistan? Unfortunately, there's North Korea, Turkey, and China. And talking about the advice or the exchange of telephonic conversation between Ajit Doval and the Chinese ambassador. And yes, Chinese ambassador in India. Because I have no doubt in my mind the Chinese would have provided Pakistan in the last 14 days with some degree of surveillance capability and the nature of what could be the reaction from India, purely intelligence sharing, because they are brothers and their relationship is higher than the Himalayas and deeper than the Indian Ocean.
Okay. Gen Kakar, final question then to you, sir. Air Marshal Kakar is pointing us in the direction of the geopolitical environment. In your understanding, sir, there's China on one side, there's Russia on one side, there's America on one side. How does India navigate this territory? What do you think how's that world part of the story really going to play out, sir?
See, there is always a very strong perception that Pakistan could not have done this attack in Pahalgam without having got clearance from China. It's well aware that India is bound to retaliate. It would have definitely received backing. And if you remember a recent interview on one of our own channels, where the Chinese head of one of the institutes, which is very close to the CCP, mentioned that it is our job to ensure that Pakistan is protected and safe. Now, we're not looking at further escalation. The message has gone clear, not only from us, but even the Chinese would have been very clear that we've done what we wanted to, and that's it. The point is, what is now with Pakistan? You've got to realize what is the overall Indian aim? Our overall aim is to stop this terror machine from continuing in our territory. That's what the aim is.
Right.
Can that aim be achieved solely by a military strike? No. We've seen it over the years. It may create a gap, but it will come again. So what have we done this time different? We're aiming at the Awam. The water, stopping of trade, including your APIs and medicines. Whom are you going to hit? The Awam. If the Awam is unhappy, he doesn't get water for his kharif crops. Today, as it is, there's a report in the Dawn, if you've read, which says that one of their major dams has just got 35 days of water left, and they'll have to stop giving water for irrigation. And they have to be banking on the water that's going to flow as per the IWT. So you don't get the water as per the IWT. Even if you get 15-20% less, you're impacting the entire kharif crop. So when you hit the Awam rises up. It is only the Awam who can change the atmosphere within the country. And unless you target the Awam, you're not going to get what you achieve. So what we need to do is use an overall concept, which is what the government has done. And which possibly it will apply more measures to push this concept. So if we are going to achieve what we need to do, it's a whole of government approach of employing multiple different routes rather than the military alone, which is what we are discussing today.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time with us today and your thoughts, Air Marshal Kakar and General Kakar. I think this is the beginning of the story, and I think Air Marshal Kakar is right. We don't know what comes next, but we can tell you one thing. Whatever is the next step of the story will keep you ahead on the factual front and not necessarily on the rhetorical front, which is often out there for many people to see. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being with you.